everyone. Thank you so much for being here in another session of JSET. Today, we have the pleasure of being with Laila Sandroni. She is an anthropologist and geographer with experience in transdisciplinary research in social sciences, and her research interests lie in the field of transformations to sustainability and the role of different kinds of knowledge in defining the best paths to achieve biodiversity conservation and forest management. She also has a particular expertise in epistemology, power-knowledge relations, and evidence-based policy and environmental issues. And she currently leads the programs of the Transdisciplinary Academy at the InterAmerican Institute for Global Change Research. Laila, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure having you to lead this talk today. And yeah, it's good to have your presentation.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you so much, everyone, for the invitation. It's lovely to be here at JSET. And well, before I start, I wanted to offer you like a brief overview about my talk and the decision that we have made together talking to Paula about the focus of today's talk. As she presented me, I am a researcher in transdisciplinary science and the use of a transdisciplinary approach for global environmental change issues, especially in biodiversity conservation. So I could have this talk about my own research, right? So my pathway as a transdisciplinary researcher, some of the challenges that I have faced and things that I have used to overcome them. I'm going to touch upon that, but I'm not going to focus on those aspects because I also wear a different hat today. Over the past 3 years, I have been working with the InterAmerican Institute for Global Change Research in supporting and developing capacity building and grant supporting initiatives to be able to build the ground so that other people can implement a transdisciplinary approach in their own research, right? So I'm on the other side of the research implementation process, on the side of the people that write the calls, that receive the projects, that analyze them, and then offer the grants to different people. And I think it's interesting to show this other side because this is something that is not so commonly discussed with the researchers, right? So I think talking about the efforts that we need to make in the support system for science, for transdisciplinary research to happen is also something that is really relevant on the side of the scientists trying to implement just social-ecological transitions, right? So the flow of today's talk will be, I'm going to present to you briefly the InterAmerican Institute and what we do at the IAI and why I am now in this position, like a little brief part of my own history as a researcher to make you understand why I am in this position right now in coordinating the program of the Transdisciplinary Academy at the IAI. And then I'm going to talk to you about the concept of transdisciplinary research that we use at the institution, and then offer you some examples about of the work that we do in capacity building and scientific support for transdisciplinary research. So the InterAmerican Institute for Global Change Research is an intergovernmental organization. Right? It's kind of like a really tiny UN. Is an organization made out of a treaty that was signed by different states across the Americas. But we have a different prerogative than most of the intergovernmental organizations. We are a research support system as well a intergovernmental organization. The IAI was funded based on the Declaration of Montevideo that was signed in 1992. At that moment, we had 12 member states, and then the institution kept growing over time. And nowadays we have 19 member countries listed there, so we cover most of the territories of the Americas. And our core values are scientific excellence, international cooperation, full and open exchange of scientific information relevant to global environmental change. Here you have some links. I can share this presentation with you afterwards of our open data and open science policy and our gender and equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. Basically, the IAI works in supporting, advancing, and elevating scientific research that is based in transnational collaboration between different countries in the Americas according to our science agenda. The science agenda names some key thematic areas that are understood by our member states as important to tackle in the context of global environmental change, right? So we have issues related to climate change and climate variability, the human dimensions of global change modulations in the atmosphere, oceans, and freshwaters, and ecosystems, biodiversity, land use and land cover, and water resources. So those themes are also break down into sub-themes that guide our actions in the directions of the regional priorities according to our focal points and our member states. So during its 32 years of existence, now almost 33, the IAI concepts have evolved. So in the early days in 1992, you can see that this was the same year that the summit of UN in Rio happened. And it was the visionary agreement was embedded in that moment of the 90s of the need of interdisciplinary science to tackle with the global change issues that were faced at that moment. Over time, these concepts and practices have evolved towards terms that we understand that nowadays are more adequate to address the same set of visions and missions that were already envisioned in the establishment agreement in 1992. So today we use a lot the terms transformation, transdisciplinary research, science policy interface, and science diplomacy. These are the key concepts that guide our actions, our support, and our elevation of the science for the region. We highlight here two of the key programs of the IAI, the Transdisciplinary Academy that is under my leadership, and the Science, Technology, and Policy Fellowship Program that trains early to mid-career researchers and practitioners across the Americas about how to better communicate across the science policy interface. So, what we understand as transdisciplinarity. I know that this might be something that you guys that are in this scenario already know, but I wanted to make sure that we are on the same page in terms of what the IAI understands as transdisciplinary research. We understand transdisciplinarity as a research that encompasses not just diverse disciplines, but also non-academic knowledges for solution-oriented outcomes, which requires epistemological shifts and methods reflection. So we understand here that TD is a field that is trying to overcome the challenges. Oh, sorry. We have sustainability here at SDSU and the lights automatically runs out. So transdisciplinary research encompasses these diverse sets of knowledge to deal with the challenges that we have in global environmental change today. So if you come from the history of science in the beginning of the positivist forms of science, we understood that issues should be addressed by a disciplinary focus. One, natural science normally trying to tackle with the issue. Then you had the pathway towards multidisciplinary science, where different perspectives come to the forefront, but you're still entangled in a disciplinary field because each of the sciences look at the problem from its own perspective. Then you have interdisciplinarity, where those different sciences come together, but they all look at the same problem. And then you have transdisciplinarity, that you have those different academic disciplines and also different types of non-academic knowledges working together to bring about solutions for a given issue. So why do we think transdisciplinarity is important at this moment? So we are facing challenges that are really huge and that cannot be solved from an individual perspective. So you can see there that the one person inside that city that is coming with all those really huge waves is saying, be sure just to wash your hands and you will be well. You're not going to be well just by closing the tap of the water or recycling your own garbage. We need to think about collective solutions to those really huge collective and wicked problems that we are facing today. But, and this is really important, transdisciplinary research is nothing but one trend of trying to bridge the science-society gap that is needed to address complex socio-environmental problems. So we have different realms of scientific endeavors that try to overcome those challenges. So we have, for instance, everybody that is working around citizen science, open science, actionable science. And then you have engaged research, post-normal science, which is really big in many parts in Latin America, co-research and co-design that are also pretty big in many parts of the US and North America, the science policy interface that is really important across the Americas, and the evidence-based policy, and many other fields of knowledge that in some aspects are similar to the prospects that transdisciplinary research brings to the table. But you have a few differences between them, and also some of the key features that keep showing up when you use that specific name, transdisciplinary research. One aspect is that it requires an in-depth integration of the disciplines that includes natural and social sciences through some kind of epistemological consideration of what is being done in the project. So this is really different from citizen science and open science and actionable science, for instance, that don't necessarily invest that much in interdisciplinarity. So citizen science, there are many projects in biological conservation in citizen science, for instance, that keeps only within the disciplinary boundaries of biological sciences, but then connect with society through this crowdsourcing collective data, for instance, and so on. The second point is that it necessarily includes non-academic knowledges differing from participatory perspectives, because transdisciplinary science tends to go towards co-production. So that means that those non-academic knowledges are incorporated into the project since the beginning. Another point is that they link general and case-specific knowledge, since local knowledges tend to be case-specific and relatable, but not generalizable. So this differs a lot from evidence-based policy approaches because they look at non-institutional stakeholders as an important actors to be involved in transdisciplinary research. And in a last point is that transdisciplinary research tends to or aims to develop solutions and actions that promote the common good. And because of that, it is closer to co-research or co-design practices. So the bottom line that I wanted to highlight here is that transdisciplinary research is not the only prospect for the bridging the science policy or the science society gap out there, but it is an important one. You don't need necessarily to call yourself a transdisciplinary researcher to be practicing at least parts of what we understand as transdisciplinary. So we see a political importance of the term right now because of the increase on the amounts of funding and momentum that is being gained by this specific way of naming ways of bridging the science-society gap. So transdisciplinarity becomes an open field of opportunity for two key things. One, partnering up with like-minded people to produce and implement interesting projects. So just social-ecological transitions could be also a way of naming people that are invested in processes that relate to transdisciplinary research, for instance. And the spaces that fund transdisciplinary research could be an interesting space to be occupied by people like the ones in this room here today, or people that might be watching afterwards. And the second point is precisely to access this funding opportunity that wish to support transdisciplinary research. So there is a way of engaging with people already doing research with local indigenous populations, for instance, or trying to work with local governments to develop policy outcomes, and bring those people into projects that have this transdisciplinary component. So the IAI, thinking about that, especially in Latin America, most people that implement transdisciplinary practices do not use this name. They use other names to refer to their own cross-cutting methodologies. So we use intentionally a basic comprehension of TD in order to make our calls and actions open to different people working or willing to take the risk of innovating in this direction. So we understand as TD just that research that encompasses different disciplines from natural and social sciences, that encompasses non-academic knowledges since the beginning, the inception of the project, and that the project is solution-oriented and creates tangible outcomes with positive impact in sustainability issues. So then circling back to my own trajectory and why I came to this position in leading the processes of the Transdisciplinary Academy at the IAI. I come from, I'm an anthropologist and geographer, so I graduated in both fields and have developed all my research trajectory based on participatory practices of research, but I didn't call myself as a transdisciplinary researcher until the end of my PhD. During my PhD, I worked with an overlap between an indigenous land and a wildlife refugee in southern Bahia in Brazil, and compared the perspectives of the indigenous populations and the nonprofit environmental NGOs that were working in the region to recognize the different solutions to the preservation of the Atlantic forest. And towards the end of that process is that I understood myself as a transdisciplinary researcher as I was trying to incorporate those diverse stakeholders into the solutions for that area in conservation project management and conservation planning. So after that, I was hired as a postdoc to work in a transnational project called Conviva Conservation Project, that was looking at the relationships between large apex predators and local communities, different stakeholders, in 4 places in the world. And I was in charge of the project in Brazil looking at the human-jaguar relationships. So again, trying to encompass different stakeholders to produce policy outcomes in terms of tackling the human-wildlife conflicts across the globe. And finally, over the past years, I have been working in this other big project, but that one just in Brazil across 8 study sites that is called the Social-Environmental Dynamics Observatory. And I was hired as the person that would make a methodological cross-cutting analysis of the 8 case studies about the challenges and opportunities of implementing the transdisciplinary perspective. So from that trajectory, when I reached the end of my postdoc, I got hired as a Science, Technology, and Policy Fellow inside the IAI, is exactly to work on the bridge with the scientists that are transdisciplinary. So they hired me as a transdisciplinary practitioner that could understand the challenges of the practice and try to bring them to the other side, to the side of the institution supporting the transdisciplinary science, and to be able to recognize which tools, capacity building, and changes in the call development process would be needed for transdisciplinarity to be more successful. So they needed someone that understood that transdisciplinary research in practice is not an easy path to build and not an easy path to follow. So you have the expectation that you're just going to put bricks over the water and cross to the other side. But the reality is that in transdisciplinary research, you build some parts of the pathway and not other ones are left undone. And you need to jump around to be able to cross to the other side. There are many challenges implicated in implementing this innovative approach. So these deep knowledge co-production processes encompass diversity stakeholders in the diverse stages of the process. And this means that we need different kinds of tools and skills that we don't usually get when we get trained as researchers in the colleges, right? Especially natural scientists don't get that kind of training. So some of the challenges that we face are the limited time and resources to build the trustful collaborations that we need to build over time, conflicting perspectives or priorities between yourself as a researcher, the different stakeholders in the field, the different stakeholders among each other. Another challenge is about the researcher positionality, that you have to test your ethics all the time in trying to incorporate and overcome the power structures that come in front of you when you try to encompass different perspectives. You have the problem with aligned and non-aligned partners. So you might have partners that have conflicts between them. You have the power asymmetries that are already there. You have north-south disparities and overlying colonialism. These ones, just to name a few. But you also have a set of opportunities that are opened by this kind of research that are also really important. So some of them are the diversity and innovation that you get to because you are encompassing diverse views. So you can create innovative solutions that would not be produced by science alone. You can enhance your skills in impact and communication. You can build trust and long-standing partnerships, and you generate common ground and languages, and you promote leadership among different kinds of people, including the researcher themselves and the stakeholders involved. So based on these challenges and opportunities, or other challenges and opportunities like these, the IAI has been developing a few activities inside the Transdisciplinary Academy umbrella to try to make the proponents of projects that are transdisciplinary more robust and truly transdisciplinary. That is, by offering tools and capacity building for project proponents to incorporate different perspectives since the inception of the project across the whole process of project implementation. So the first process that we did was a seed grants process in climate, environment, and health. There were 12 groups across the Americas that participated in this program. They received 40 hours of training. I saw Gabriela here at some point, I think. Yeah, Gabriela is still here. Gabriela Alonso Yanes, who is here at the meeting today, she was a part of this process of training these groups, and they have developed the projects that they submitted afterwards during the online process. And because of that, we guarantee the really high quality of the transdisciplinary component of the projects. And then they were approved to receive one-year grants to experiment with the new kind of project implementation that they have learned about across the capacity building program. So these seed grants encompass 15 countries of our 19 member states, more than 130 researchers. Sorry, I didn't translate that sentence there. Over $250,000 in funding were given to these investigators, and more than almost $300,000 in co-funding. And we also have a really high regard of making sure that underrepresented populations in science get a larger space in those research. So for instance, 10 out of the 12 principal investigators of the projects are women, and 4 out of 12 are early career. So these are some of the themes that we have encompassed in that call. This whole process culminated, so all of those people involved in that project were gathered in a regional workshop that welcomed all the people involved in the project, in those projects, together with the Provincia de Neuquén in Argentina. And there they discussed again different kinds of tools and generated this community of practice in transdisciplinary research in climate, environment, and health, connecting to the Ministerio de Salud in the province. And this is still generating data that is being used by the Ministry of Salud there just right now. We partnered there with the organization, the Organización Panamericana de la Salud, la OPS. 1 year after this program in climate, environment, and health, we have developed this second training program specifically related to tropical forests in the Americas. We have received 80 applications for this program. We accepted 20 teams. Each of those 20 teams are conformed by at least one natural scientist, one social scientist, and one non-academic stakeholder, encompassing 13 countries across our 19 member states, and 112 people were participated in this capacity building. 38 of them are non-academics. So we try to implement this transdisciplinary perspective that we want to see in the projects already to the capacity building initiatives, right? So we had indigenous and community leaders, policymakers, local association leaders, and so on that were part of our training program. These people received 32 hours of training and self-paced and also live. So these are self-paced modules that were composed with asynchronous sessions. From those 20 teams, we have received 14 projects, and we have selected 9 of them that receive $30,000 to $50,000 to implement and experiment on the innovative methodological approaches that were gathered during the capacity building program. So we have applied the same model that we did for the first time for climate, environment, and health. And these are some of the key words of the project, so you can get a sense also of the the thematic areas, traditional knowledges, adaptation, conservation, forest, agriculture, biodiversity, social bioeconomy, and so on. So these training programs have the objectives of enhancing the capacity of professionals and institutions across the Americas to apply transdisciplinary approach to address the challenges, in this case, facing tropical forests, and in the first case, climate, environment, and health, to promote research, and this was a really key focus of the Tropical Forest One, to dialogue directly with indigenous and local knowledge, to foster collaborations at the regional level, so little by little increasing and creating this community of practice that engages with non-academic knowledges to produce innovative solutions across our region, especially across Latin America, and strengthen transdisciplinary research capabilities of early and mid-career professionals. So people that are inside the PhD student or postdoc level coming out of our academic institutions, we want to offer them the opportunity to practice and experiment and lead a project that has transdisciplinarity as the key approach. And also encompass groups that are underrepresented. So in all our rubrics, for the selection in the beginning of the process and to the selection of the projects in the end of the process, we have high grades that go for being part of underrepresented groups. That could be geographically speaking, regarding the countries that are least represented, or it could be about the ethnic or racial background, or also gender. I think I spoke already too much, so I'm not going to go into much depth about the Belmont Forum. I can answer other questions about that, but I just wanted to let you know that these initiatives relate to larger global scope funding initiatives that are led by the Belmont Forum. So these training programs are thought about to enhance our participation in also transdisciplinary global landscapes. That was the case for the forests, collaborative research action, and also the climate, environment, and health research action. This one is open right now. It is open for the full proposals. The pre-proposal phase is already closed. And the IAI currently hosts the Belmont Forum. So this is really important because this is a way of developing research calls in a global landscape that have stronger and more robust projects regarding the transdisciplinary approach. I just wanted to highlight here that the IAI also has a participatory process and applies a transdisciplinary approach to defining the scope of the research calls that we develop as well. And last but not least, this is the framework of the transdisciplinary curriculum that Gabriela Alonso, present here, developed together with Dr. Lily House-Peters and Marshall E. Valentine. And this is a course in 4 modules that was implemented for the first time with the cohort for tropical forests last year. We have received a lot of feedback from the course participants and revised the entire curriculum. And now, this year, we're going to make it available to the IAI community. That means all our 19 member states and anyone interested in accessing the course. The course will be launched this July, and it is composed of 4 modules: foundational concepts in TD research, transformative TD research for confronting JAC issues in Latin America and the Caribbean, capacity building and successful collaborations in TD research, and project design for TD research. And all of these modules are grounded in a really strong and well-done case study book that is based on case studies just from Latin America and the Caribbean. So the whole perspective and foundational concepts that are shared are from our region with the perspective of our region. So this is a really important aspect of this curriculum, and it will have a certificate provided and will be available to everyone. So this is the last thing that I needed to share with you. So if you're interested, please stay tuned. You can subscribe to our newsletter because the course will be available in our virtual campus. So I can also share this with you so you can, everything that the IAI produces is in both English and Spanish, at least. And I'm still fighting for the Portuguese every time, but sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But at least in English and Spanish, everything that we produce is available. So you can get access to all of that in our website soon enough.
Laila, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was really insightful, this presentation, to make us do some reflections about the transdisciplinarity and how we can address it also in our own research and in our own practice. So yeah, we are welcoming now our attendants to provide comments or questions. Also, the people connected on Zoom, feel free to share your comments or questions through the chat.
I'm actually wondering about the dissemination of some of these capacity building opportunities. They sound amazing. So is it just for people who are interested in applying for grants or eligible, or is there a mechanism to get them out to a broader audience for anybody who kind of wants to be part of the TD family?
So the course will be available to anyone willing to take it, right? So basically, it's a self-paced course that you guys could use, for instance, in your own classes with your own students or whoever wants to use them. We do a process of accompanying a group of people that is going through the course to make sure that these people are following everything and having this online synchronous moment to be able to connect to those people and solidify the concepts that they have received through the self-paced course, right? So this is something that the IAI offers also according to the need of different institutions, right? So we can do this for different populations. It doesn't need to be coupled with a seed grant at the end. This is the way that we do it because it's a way that it makes sense to us because we can implement the project afterwards. But in the context of someone that already has funding in another site, for instance, and wants to implement a transdisciplinary approach, we could have different sorts of training using the material that would be available with our participation or without. So that depends on the relationships that are built and or the requests that we receive from different institutions. Of course, we are a bit bound to our regional limits, right? So, for instance, we were called once to offer a training program in Africa, and we can't really do that.
To the degree that you're able to respond to this question in this time and space, like with the Belmont Forum, as well as IAI more broadly, like its relationships with the National Science Foundation in the United States, I'm curious to know what you can comment on about current funding challenges and or changes and priorities at the National Science Foundation, and how that might affect IAI's work going forward, or how you all are thinking about that, and with regard to like future funding calls and the kind of the work that you're doing, because it's such an interesting and unique kind of model, as you said, a mini UN in some regards. So this supranational or international effort and initiative, but also linked up, as I understand, to several national funding initiatives, science funding initiatives. And so just be curious to hear your thoughts on that and the challenges of navigating this context that we're all trying to learn with and through that's unfolding right now.
Thank you for the question. And well, I will respond according to the possibilities at the moment. So the IAI has a core funding that comes from the contributions of the different countries, right? Each member state pays a small contribution for the general structure of the IAI. But then all the processes that are related to supporting big research calls or larger research grants, we have the support of one or two or three specific institutions. Surely the USNSF and the Canadian Research Council and the Brazilian CNPq are some of our three key partners because these are the three largest nations that we have worked with. So Mexico also has a pretty strong budget as well, but we don't have a stronger relationship. We're trying to change that at this very moment, but the IAI historically and traditionally have not worked as much with Mexico as we did with Argentina, Brazil, United States, and Canada. And now also really strongly with Panama. So because of this intergovernmental role that we have, we do have this possibility of managing different ways of supporting science if one funding institution has lower funding in one specific political context or the other, right? But then again, of course, the NSF, the National Science Foundation of the US, is one of the key donors for the Belmont Forum projects. So in that regard, specifically, these are larger funding initiatives that have this global scope and that depend on these larger amounts. So we're talking about projects here that go from $200,000 to $250,000 per project in 3 to 4 to 5 years, you know, so this is way larger than the kinds of projects that I was showing you here that are 30 to 50 one-year projects. And we are also talking about more projects funded per call. So regarding the Belmont Forum, there is a lot of uncertainty, not just for the IAI, but in general terms, because the NSF plays a really big role in supporting sciences inside and outside the US with the Belmont Forum calls. So there is a lot of uncertainty on that end. And hopefully we can organize things because also the Belmont Forum has these other sources to recur to, so we can continue our work in the following years. But still, it's a really huge barrier to the advancement of the kind of work that we are doing right now, for sure.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, everybody's trying to figure out the challenge and how to navigate it, but I appreciate the feedback and thanks for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Laila, I have a question and it's related to the scales of how to frame the interests and how to effectively cover all the interests of all the actors implicated into these transdisciplinary projects, because I think that giving it transnational dimensions, of course, is a huge advance and a huge progress towards these projects and making them so large. But I think that maybe it can also bring new challenges of how to satisfy all the needs of interest that comes from the huge donors to institutions, to practitioners, and also to local people. So how the interests are prioritized and maybe satisfied into these projects and into this transdisciplinary work?
So yeah, that's one of the key prerogatives that the IAI has. So we are a really small institution with a really huge mandate, right? So our sets of rules and guiding principles are in our vision, our mission, our establishment agreement, and our scientific agenda, and that's it. National governments are really way more bounded and enclosed in terms of the rules that you have to follow to receive funding and to apply that funding. I'm saying that because since the IAI doesn't have those kinds of risk-bounding constraints as much as other national science foundations have, we have the prerogative of being open, for instance, to compensating for non-academic stakeholders' time participation. This is something that is not really possible in many of the funding institutions that are even a part of the Belmont Forum, for instance. So this is complex because they want to innovate. They open a research call and say, you have to have participation of different people, just like you said, like navigating those interests, right? So, but you cannot compensate for their time. Only researchers can be compensated for their time. But non-academic people are expected to work as much as the academic researchers, you know? So you have those kinds of problems that the IAI has because we're small and have less bounding legislation. We have this possibility of being more open to innovation on the ground. And from that, we can try to recommend to the larger established and more bureaucratic institutions pathways to overcome those kinds of challenges, right? To show, okay, you can compensate people's time because that will become a good project with these kinds of outcomes, for instance, and name the importance of that and that open. Our role as the research support institution is to try to innovate on those kinds of challenges and then be able to recommend that to other institutions. I don't know if I answered entirely your question, but that's...
Yeah, it was, thank you.
Do we have any questions from anyone online by chance? I can't see who's, do we have folks online still?
Yeah, we have some folks online, but no, they don't have questions yet.
I have a question, Laila. It's very kind of specific, but you said the scoping process for the areas of interest for the calls are, you have a whole process for that, and it's collaborative and it engages a lot of people. I don't know if you could expand on that a little more, and if you could let us know, if you can, of potential upcoming calls or areas of focus that you are thinking about?
Sure. Thanks for that question. Is exactly the part of my presentation that I rushed through because I reached the time. But this is another innovative proposal of the IAI. So usually transdisciplinary research calls, the thematic areas are decided within closed doors inside the research foundation environments, right? So in the case of the Belmont Forum, in meetings across different funding institutions, according to the national government priorities, right? So the research foundations have this portfolio of different research teams that they want to invest in according to the government of each nation. That's usually how it goes. But we at the IAI understand that we could start with those priorities. We actually had a regional assessment across the Americas to understand which of the global environmental change issues were more important to the governments. But then when we decide on the sub-themes and areas that are explicitly important for the people most affected by the problem and not the governments of those people, then you need to have other participatory instances so that the research call already reflects what is important to those people in terms of thematic streams. So if you'd like for the projects to be truly transdisciplinary, you have to ask for projects that reflect what is important for the people on the ground. So this is the reasoning behind it. So instead of developing the research call text inside the IAI and share it with funders to get it approved, we did a series of really labor-intensive workshops with different institutions across the region. Because it's tropical forest and it's global in scope, we use the Amazon as our focus because it's the biggest forest of our region. So we cannot encompass like all the community-based perspectives from forests across the globe. So we tried to do that to the best of our ability for the Amazon. And we did 3 workshops in local, hearing what would be important in a call for the tropical forests from local indigenous associations, local people's associations, local governments, and also from the researchers from the different disciplines, and those ones we hosted online, to then come with a report. So we had 100 statements that said things that were important, and we distilled them down 1 year before AI came up. So that's a bummer. It was really way more labor intensive than it needed to be right now. So we distilled those statements into the 3 thematic areas that became the core of the call afterwards. So this is also something that we tried to innovate on, so like putting the transdisciplinary approach to the call development stage, not just the project development stage.
Very cool. Thank you.
And about the upcoming, so the IAI doesn't have like the vision of being the lead of a new research call for the Belmont Forum right now. But during the Sustainability Research and Innovation Congress that will be in Chicago, there will be a number of calls that will be launched, and the IAI hopes to participate. One of them is in oceans. The other one is the Pathways 2, which is a more open perspective to global environmental change issues. It's a pretty broad view of the transformation to sustainability debate that has a strong focus on social sciences leadership to the programs and consortia.
We have a question from Carlos Hugo Rocha, and he's asking, could you talk a bit more about the previous partnerships with the CNPQs and state research agencies?
Yes, sure. Carlos, are you from Brazil as well?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
Brazilian.
Okay. Hi. So just to know how much you know about the context. With the CNPQ, we are working on the development of a series of workshops in science diplomacy with the international cooperation side of the Ministry of Science and Technology. And we are also envisioning a possibility of opening a call on climate action. And we don't really know if this would be just for Brazil. This is like ongoing conversation. This is just one possibility. And in previous times, the IAI has developed through the CNPQ collaborative research networks. So some of them had the strong participation with CNPQ. And regarding the state agencies, we have a really close partnership and a memorandum of intendment with the São Paulo Research Foundation. The forest research call was developed in direct partnership with them, so it was a co-lead between the IAI and the FAPESP. And the training program was developed together with the Santa Catarina Research Foundation. In the CRA, we also have the support of several other FAPs, especially from the Amazonian states, so FAPEAM, FAPAPI, FAPERO, that are a part of our research call in supporting the scientific research that could be developed in the Amazonian states. I think these are the most important partnerships right now. Oh, yes, and the Santa Catarina Foundation also opened a Science, Technology, and Policy Fellowship Program that will be, these people will be a part of the IAI training and capacity building programs and will be working directly with the national government in Itamaraty, with the international relations side of the national Brazilian government, or in the Santa Catarina state in the international affairs part of the civil house in the state of Santa Catarina.
Thank you, Laila.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Laila, for this insightful talk. I think that we are just on time. But it was really, really nice to have you here in this space. And we hope to open the conversation later and to continue having these discussions.
Thank you so much, all, for the invitation. These were great questions and a great group. It was really lovely to meet you. And I remain available if you guys have any questions. I'm one email away.
Great,
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Really
much.
appreciate your time.
Bye.
Wonderful to meet you.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
Ciao.
Thank you.